you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. And take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear overnight, just to give into the need and leave it all behind. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
All right, and here we are back with Old Reliable until we get this figured out. All right, it's Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. This will be a fun little show today. This is a good day. First of all, it's Thomas Jefferson's birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Thomas Jefferson. One of my favorite, if not my favorite founding father, I think. Oops, sorry, guys. Look, you gotta keep your hands off me, Laura, over here. My goodness. All right. No, but I think that Thomas Jefferson probably is. I just admire Ben Franklin's creativity, and I don't know. He's a man. He was like a Renaissance man, and so was Jefferson. Though he actually doesn't get as much credit for inventions that somebody like a Franklin does.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, but in any event, the usual hatred. Oh, he was a slave owner. Oh, Sally Hemings, he was a rapist. He raped his slaves. We only have, I'm going to address this really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
We only have primary source documents about Sally Hemings, particularly her early life, from Monticello. All right. We have them from nowhere else. And what they tell us is that he did not treat her like a typical slave. In fact, he all indications that he probably loved this woman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he, as a yes, and she was young when they started. Well, guess what? Edgar Allan Poe was married his 13-year-old cousin. Things were different. You can't judge historical figures by your standards today, by the way, which aren't very moral standards. So I don't know where we get this idea of like moral supremacy. We're a barbaric society. They would have looked at abortion with horror. Horror. Anyway, oh, they're expecting snow. Ah, lucky.
What?
I see Christina said we're expecting snow.
Oh.
So lucky. Anyway, back to the Monticello. Yeah, so they would. You cannot judge historical figures by modern standards. You can judge them against their standards, and by their standards, Jefferson was a it's Virginia, folks. Virginia. He emancipated all their children, all of her children, actually, period, which was very expensive by Virginia law. I mean, I'm not justifying slavery. Of course not.
Well, back
I'm
then
simply
it
trying to
is
say,
what it
use
was.
your brains and think about how it was back then. It required education. Virginia law was very strict
Teach 'em
about
a
this.
trade.
You needed a skill, right? And by the way, he did this for Sally Hemings. He brought her when she was young, when he was the ambassador in France, the minister of France. He brought her over. She was young, to slave-free France, where he had no legal authority over her. He got her educated. He gave her skills. He inoculated her against smallpox. This is all very expensive. And yes, he probably loved her. And now, as a slave, she had no legal right to say, no, I can't, I don't want to sleep with you. So I don't,
But
who
I'm
knows
sure
whether
that
she
was
did it willingly or not.
before.
But upon returning, she said, I'm sorry, I'm not going back. He could not force her. He said, listen, if you come back, you will live this kind of a lifestyle, and I will not treat you like a slave. But you have to work for me in a maid capacity. She agreed to return. They had children together. So this view that these people have, you're just ignorant. You're just stupid and ignorant. You got a cute little Twitter following because you're a moron and you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're perpetuating this ignorance. It's ridiculous.
Especially on the man's birthday, no less. How long ago did he die? Come on now.
I know. Really, the bottom line is Thomas Jefferson and all of our founding fathers gave us a gift I'm not sure we're worthy of. And they were enormous net positives as far as their contribution to humanity and civilization. I mean, this is ridiculous. You're just unhappy people who still wish that there was some cause you can champion.
And Eric made a great point that Thomas Jefferson was broke and he couldn't even legally free them if he wanted.
If he wanted
he
to.
had debt holders.
If he wanted to.
You see, this is why our
you know what?
community.
Thank you, Eric. I'm trying to make the point, like, yes, those were human beings, but put yourself in his position. They were actually he relied on them to satisfy those debt holders, Eric. It's like, all right, can you pay it back? How many slaves you got? Let's just go emancipate everybody, go broke, and everybody live in the street. That was not really. Would you do it? Would you really? Let's get real. Would you really? You're so much better and so much more virtuous. I don't think so. You can't even stand up for free speech of your fellow Americans right now. You're going to be, we're failing miserably as a society right now on basic human rights and basic inalienable rights that people like Jefferson, because and only because of them, we have a prayer in enjoying, which we take for granted. By the way, you want to know something? You want to, on his birthday today, you want to take one thing away? Thomas Jefferson said, we have no rights that do not come with an equal or greater duty. Take that. Marinate on that instead of whether or not he was raping Sally Hemings at Monticello.
And in the creation of the Constitution, it was, believe me, they fought over it.
Yeah, as if he wanted. You think he didn't write? You think just take the Declaration? You think he didn't know what he was writing when he wrote that? In fact, there is plenty of primary sources on this that Franklin made him change some of the wording, that he wanted to go even further. Yeah. And Franklin said that room will collapse. We can't do it. We can't do it. So he made, so he went a little bit, instead of going with the rights of man, which was much more of a passionate argument, because if you read the rights of man, which is a letter to the king, please, Dad, save us from Parliament. We're Britishmen, Dad, we're Britishmen. And that was the last chance to try to appeal to King George, who was villainized, by the way, but they did not view him like that at the time. They viewed Parliament to be their enemy. And King George only became an enemy when he didn't save them as their father-like figure from the tyranny of the Parliament, who didn't view them as Britishmen. When it became clear that he didn't view them as Britishmen either, that they were substandard colonists, that's when everybody started smearing King George, So, but at first, that was an appeal. And if you read that, you'll see what he really viewed about it. You think he didn't know when he put that in there? And then when they did create the Constitution, they did outlaw slavery, just not immediately. So, I mean, you guys really need to use your heads on this stuff on your own, because I was just reading on Twitter somebody who actually went and visited Monticello recently, and they were telling me that the people who were giving the tour were like anti-Jefferson. Then what the hell are you doing there if you can't appreciate it?
Well, just like you could just bring up simple fact. When you're dealing with one problem, right? It takes a lot. It takes a lot to solve that issue.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of pull, give, and whatnot. Now,
I should have got some of the books out, because you just reminded me of Abigail writing to John.
Oh,
Adams.
yeah. I love
and she's
that.
like, hey, honey, while you're at it, what about us women? Right? And he's like, damn it, woman. He's like, I got these people breathing down my neck. These people. He's like, you cannot change the world overnight. Give us some time. Just give us some leeway, because if we do, then we're going to have Native Americans who are going to jump in, well, what about us? And, all of these different voices. And they were very concerned, these delegates, very concerned about the order falling apart. And he was like, you will tear the fabric of society apart before we even get our revolution underway. He said, this is supposed to be a revolution, a orderly revolution. We do not want it to devolve into mob chaos and have the order fall out from beneath our feet. I mean, this is, this is also something, they were misogynists and they were racist and they were that. They had an order to consider. Stop listening to the dumb revisionist professors who want to write a book and get themselves published, by like Chapel Hill or something. Right. Stop reading that crap and just read through their own documents. All of the stuff I have, well, maybe there's an editor's note or something from the person who put it together, but primary source documents, they're heavy reading. It's the hard work. But if you want the truth, if you want an accurate, something that doesn't make them into deities, because there are people that do that today. We're men, human beings, flawed and fallible. If you want something that doesn't make them into deities, but you want something that doesn't, that's the only way to get the true picture. That is the only way to get the true picture. And Thomas Jefferson was not an atheist. That's another one. There is a difference between a deist and an atheist. And in fact, there were many of our founders who would have leaned in the deist direction at one point or another, which means you believe in a God, you just don't believe he interferes in the affairs of men. But Franklin, Jefferson, even Washington himself, all right later in their life that, I'm second thinking this. I think he does, because I don't think we had a prayer in hell of this thing being a success. And I think that in the end, he probably, oh my goodness gracious.
Look at you.
Oh my goodness. I did. I just remembered. Hold on, because this is there's a chapter on this in Our Virtuous Republic, as a matter of fact. And there was a reason why I was bringing this up. There's a reason I was bringing this up for later in the book. They clear the laws of nature. Nature's God should give you an idea. But, the Declaration is a deal with God.
Yes.
That's what it is.
And
it's a pledge to God.
They all believed in some form of God. It wasn't the same.
But they were Protestants, and they didn't believe in organized religion, most of them. The longer I live, here it is. This is, indeed. The longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth that God governs in the affairs of men. Thomas Jefferson. The adoption of the Constitution will... Oh, no, that was Washington. I'm sorry. Thomas Jefferson, here it is. A frequent target of distortions by revisionists, similarly exhibited deist tendencies earlier in his life, which have drawn considerable attention recently at the time it did. Most notable in his later work, known as the Jefferson Bible. However, redacting passages that told of miraculous events was more a rebuke of the established church and less his disbelief in God's ability to do so. He referred to himself as a Unitarian, or one who believed that Jesus Christ was a great prophet, teacher, and in some cases the Son of God, but not God himself. As an early proponent of abolition, although a slave owner himself, he, quote, trembled. This is what he wrote. Trembled in a belief that the sins of slavery would be met with a supernatural influence or divine intervention. He was afraid that God was going to do something to them for the sins of slavery. Mm-hmm. He trembled at the idea.
Like atheist. Is that an atheist to you?
Oh my God.
I guess the last definition of atheism is somebody who trembles before God.
And by the way, the whole abolitionist movement, and Glory was on the other day. Mm-hmm. For those of you who don't know, Colonel or Major, right? Robert Shaw. Mm-hmm. He led the 54th Massachusetts.
Oh, that movie makes me cry.
Yeah, it's played by Matthew Broderick. All right, he plays Colonel Robert Shaw, daughter of a wealthy New England family. Right, traveled all over, went to Switzerland. Just couldn't find his way in life, and then eventually he decided he did like the military, and he became a great symbol. Him and the 54th became a great symbol of the Northern effort to get free black men in the fight. All right. And they all, or more than 2/3 of them, including Robert Shaw, died trying to take Fort Wagner in South Carolina. Nobody ever took Fort Wagner, by the way. It was like a narrow pass. You couldn't get in. And it was just, it was a bloodbath. But in any event, they were a great inspiration. And he was a Unitarian. His family was a very abolitionist, early abolitionist. They knew Frederick Douglass. Basically, Jefferson, even though he was from Virginia, shared a lot in common with those early abolitionist Unitarians, and those churches became the seed for the abolitionist movement. And they were holy warriors, they called themselves, So I mean, you guys really, it's so sad that social media is not fulfilling its once great promise to expand the reach of information, to lift the great debate. It is not. In fact, it's having a complete opposite effect. It spreads ignorance and disinformation. And
it's information that it wants you to have.
And it's manipulated, right? Yeah. So it's just so sad. Speaking of manipulation, let's move on to my day in the sun. All right.
I love you.
I mean, well, listen, the polling, the errors of the polling industry have been greatly exaggerated by some. All right. And I see he's trending. That was what, the Slimer wrote not like 2 weeks ago. And the fact of the matter is, that is because he is a fraud who relies on other people to do work that he then pretends he's some guru at analyzing. The truth is, and stop calling this guy a pollster, everybody. He is not a pollster. He has never polled a single person in his life. He wouldn't know what to do if I brought him in the office and gave him the software. He wouldn't know what the hell to do. He is not a pollster. He is a poll reader and a bad fake fraud one at that. And he needs you to believe the polls are accurate because that's all he's got. There is no model over there. It isn't some complex mathematical equation and algorithm.
The secret sauce.
It is a fraud. He is a poll reader. And because he is a fraud, nothing but a poll reader, he needs you. He needs all of you. He needs the public. He needs the media to believe that there is nothing wrong with this industry because he has no other predictive value. Folks, there was no other non-poll predictive indicator to suggest that Joe Biden would carry the state of Texas. Yet it was blue. The only so-called predictive indicator that suggested Joe Biden would carry the state of Florida were polls. Yet on his map, Florida was blue. Ohio was not competitive at all. Yet on his map, it was. They were neck and neck in Iowa. It was not competitive. He needs you to believe that these things are accurate because that is what he is. He needs them to have credibility, but they don't. And he hurts the industry even more when he makes excuses for them. Let's look at this article in Politico today. Okay? And I'm going to make this full screen. Actually, you guys can see. I'll make it full screen. I'll make it full screen so I could do something that YouTube keeps screaming at me for doing on camera.
Don't get in trouble now, Richie.
Hold on, I'm just clearing my throat, folks. Me.
Yeah, huh?
Me.
Richie is doing something he shouldn't be doing.
Watch.
Oh, yeah,
People are going to be like, he drinks on air or something.
Or you don't wear pants too big.
Yeah. I also, you know what? I should stand up right now and show. My idea of cheating is putting on a pair of Joseph A. Banks traveler jeans for the show instead of a pair of dress pants. All right. Richie. That's my idea of cheating. You will never catch me in my underwear on a show or a conference call pulling on my tubing. All right. All right. A group of top Democratic pollsters are set to release a public statement Tuesday acknowledging, quote, major errors, unquote, in their 2020 polling. Errors that left party officials stunned by election results that failed to come close to expectations in November. In an unusual move, 5 of the party's biggest polling firms have spent the past few months working together to explore what went wrong last year and how it can be fixed. Politico has got so many ads that this thing is freezing up. You know what? I'm going to have to just read it, folks, myself. This is another reason. I don't know how I don't have problems like this. Wait, we wanted the other thing. Is it freezing on your end? I really hope it's not frozen.
It just froze here, but hold on.
Hold on. I'm going to hit stop because I really it's going to. Here we go. Until it did. Well, look, Robert.
I'm on Richie.
Ta-da!
Like,
and I'm back.
Got you, Jefferson.
Magic. Well, it doesn't look like I can share my screen with you. I don't ever. This is why we wanted to go to the other thing in the first place. This always happened to me when I went to share my screen. It would glitch, but that time it just completely took me off. All right, so I'm going to read this on my end. All right, I tweeted it. If you want to read along, it's on your side, but I'm not going to disappear like that again. I lost half the audience.
Yes.
All right, more than half actually.
Yes.
All right, so in an unusual mood, 5 of the party's biggest polling firms have spent the past few months working together to explore what went wrong last year and how it can be fixed. It's part of an effort to understand why, despite data showing Joe Biden well ahead of former President Donald Trump and Democrats poised to increase their House majority, the party won the presidency, the Senate, and the House by extremely narrow margins. By the way, do you notice that a tie in the U.S. Senate or a tie in any chamber is automatically assumed to really be a Democratic majority? Even if we talk about Kamala Harris being the president of the Senate, if the roles were reversed and Republicans were relying on Mike Pence all the time, that they would not consider it a majority. All right. They would say it's a split Senate and that Republicans would not be able to ram through legislation like this with a split Senate. They automatically, this is part of the construct I'm always talking about with you guys. This is the benefit the Democrats have from the system itself, the construct itself. It is created to give Democrats an advantage, an edge, a handicap. All right. So this little song and dance. Oh, I just want to say 2020 was an moment for all of us, said one pollster involved in the effort who was granted anonymity to discuss the process candidly. Quote, and I think that we all kind of quickly came to the point that we need to set our egos aside. We need to get this right, unquote. But that sounds familiar, doesn't it? I feel like we've been down this road before, haven't we?
Deja vu.
Mitt Romney was never ahead. Those were artifacts of the polling itself, a response bias. Mitt Romney has a great debate. Democrats don't want to talk a whole lot. Republicans do. But in truth, they're acknowledging a major problem dating back to 2012. I would argue, as others like Murray, exit poll veterans have long argued, this problem has existed for a very long time. It's just getting worse now. Much, much worse. Republicans, their wave in 2010 was grossly underestimated. All of the election, that's one of the reasons that led us, along with 2012, and we wanted to be involved in 2014 with our forecast model, because in 2014 we knew it was going to happen again. Republicans had a very favorable map. You had people, hiccups, like, other forecast models hold prior, for instance, in Arkansas against Tom Cotton. He was clearly dead in the water. Clearly. He won in 2008 because of Obama. It was a very favorable election to the Democratic Party. They clearly could not hold Arkansas. Alaska, down the line. Kay Hagan was ahead 7 to 10 points until the final week, in which not a single poll gave Tom Tillis the lead. Yet he defeated Kay Hagan by the almost exact margin that we polled and predicted. The model got thrown off by public polls, and that was our miss because of public polls. That caused us to make the one change we have ever made to that model, which is to reduce the weighting variable for public polls. Their predictive value was no longer reliable. So this problem has existed for a while. In 2004, George W. Bush was expected to lose. The exit polls came in. He lost Florida, Ohio, Iowa, and could have lost Virginia. That's what the exit polls showed, just for people who didn't know. Virginia, which was a Republican state back then. George W. Bush won the state of Virginia by 7 points. He won the state of Florida by a larger margin. He expanded his margin. And Democrats would go on to claim that he was a fraudulent president because, are you ready? The exit polls showed no statistical possibility for him to win the state of Ohio. That was their argument. And they objected to his electors in Congress on that argument. Barbara Boxer led the effort. I kid you not. No joke. Nothing about signature verification problems. Nothing about legitimate ballots that were being questioned or illegitimate ballots. No. No affidavits. No. Exit polls. Anyway, then we get to 2016. Those of us who polled it differently were either smeared as frauds or just smeared. Mm-hmm. They bomb it. They screw it up. We don't. And instead of listening to us, the people who didn't screw it up, they smeared us. They had their little conventions and exclusive little conventions that included only the screw-ups. 18 rolls around and they used, listen, if you think they didn't know they were doing this on purpose, you're crazy. We're beyond that. They used what was arguably an accurate generic ballot to show that Democrats were going to win. And they ignored all of the polling misses at the state level, gubernatorial elections, governors, senatorial elections. Down the line, folks. We were the only ones. Oh, no, Robert. I don't know if Robert polled. He did poll the Senate race. He did. Mm-hmm. And he got it right. Yep. In Florida, with the exception of Robert Cahaley at Trafalgar and myself, Rick Scott and Andrew Gillum were going to lose. We had Gillum ahead of Ron DeSantis for a little bit in the spring, but we never had Bill Nelson ahead of Rick Scott. Not once. Rick Scott was floating with a 1 to 6 point lead. When, by the way, it was Scott plus 6. Even I said there's no way Rick Scott's winning by 6. There's some noise. There's some static in the data. Nobody wins Florida by 6 points. Not a competitive election. But in any event, Ohio, you name it. I mean, just down the line, bad call after bad call after bad call. Claire McCaskill was going to win that election. Fox News. Joe Donnelly was going to hold his seat by 7 points in Indiana. Fox News. Andrew Gillum was going to beat Ron DeSantis by 12 points. CNN. They ignored all of that and pressed forward to the presidential election, pumping you with lies. We fixed it. We fixed it. We fixed it. They didn't fix jack. They didn't fix anything. In fact, some of those misses in Florida and in the Midwest were bigger than 2016. That's the truth. It was very clear, very early on, even in a Democratic wave, sort of half a wave. Wasn't a wave. A wave is both chambers and down ballot. Even in a favorable year for Democrats, they were still having a hard time winning gubernatorial elections in Ohio, winning any kind of statewide race in Florida. In a D+10 national mood, an incumbent senator was defeated by a Republican in Florida. That should have been the alarm going off.
Yeah, alert.
Alert. We have a serious problem. We can't poll it. Not a single poll had Mike DeWine up. Not a single one. All summer long, there was one Marist poll that had DeWine, I think, up by 2 or 3 points. And then they herded, like everybody else, to Richard Cordray defeating Mike DeWine in Ohio. Didn't happen. DeWine soundly defeated Cordray. Look at Susan Collins. Joni Ernst. All of this was all over the map. So here's a thought, because these 5 groups claim, and here we go. That's about where the answers end, Politico says. The collaboration's first public statement acknowledges that the industry, quote, saw major errors and failed to live up to our own expectations, unquote. But the memo also underscores the limits of the polling autopsy, noting that, quote, you ready? No consensus on a solution has emerged, unquote. Here's a thought. Here's how you get your consensus. Shut up The loser cannot tell you how to win. The screw up cannot tell you how to succeed until at least they prove themselves to be a winner or someone who can succeed. Here's a real thought. Listen. Listen to the ones who didn't screw it up. Listen to the ones who got it right again while you did not.
Well, they're too busy talking.
I have been giving
they don't listen.
Solutions.
For how long?
For how long? In 2016, they smeared our methodology. The Slimer even said it was basically fake. Then after 16, the AP steals it, abandons exit polls, and uses it as their methodology to replace the system of exit polls. Not a single, we're sorry, forget about it, thank you. An apology would have at least sufficed.
Or just, he was right, we were wrong.
Larger samples, targeted quotas, extended periods in the field, conditions of anonymity, removing your biases, removing or reducing, I would remove altogether the live interview. There's too much social desirability bias in a live interview. Acknowledging the response bias and the social desirability bias overwhelmingly favors the Democratic Party. What has happened and why it is getting worse in this country is because the media, they want to blame Donald Trump, because some of these Democratic pollsters want to blame Donald Trump for calling the pollsters frauds and saying they're dishonest and they're part of the media. And I told you this myself, that they were associating even us. I mean, they don't know who we are. They're associating us with media. And it's hurting even us. That was not Donald Trump's fault. That was the media's fault. Mm-hmm. The media calls half the country racist. The media repeatedly champions these race hoaxes. The media repeatedly pushes these hoaxes like the Charlottesville hoax, the Very Fine People hoax. The media tells you that you're racist if you think as a citizen you should have a say on who does and does not come to this country. That you should have a say on whether or not your child still goes to school in person or is forced to stay at home and lose 2/3 of their education for the year. The story is always the same. They're more virtuous and you are backward scumbags. Loser, loser. Did you know you're a loser? You're a racist loser. Your husband's a racist loser. Your wife's a racist loser. Your kids you're raising, they're all going to be racist backward hicks. What's the matter? You don't want to talk to me anymore?
I know. It's special.
We just yesterday started the conversation of solutions. Actually, over the weekend with the locals community. Sign up to peoplespundit.locals.com.
I love that.
Participate in the, I'm learning from Robert. Participate in the building of a questionnaire today. Robert, you know, Viva's so right, though. Robert's like the cheerleader for locals. But you know what? Amen. Because this is, look at what we're able to do here. Yeah.
It's an honest platform. They don't judge you. They don't care. And not all of their views are in line with our views.
Do you think that Facebook or Twitter or any of the others would allow us to raise funds for this project, right? Raise money for this project that they smear and they allow their friends in the media to smear? I know that hurt when some certain people were reading those articles. Like, you know what? I think it's time to acknowledge he did something right. I think it's time to acknowledge it. They hate him. They hate that little man's guts, but he keeps outperforming them. I know that stings. And that's fine. But at this point, don't worry. Eventually, I'm going to be wrong. And I mean, like, narrative wrong. It's statistically likely that eventually I'll call like the overall election incorrect. It's it should happen. Like when you look at the Slimer's model, he's always wrong in one direction because the polls are always wrong in one direction. And the rest of the models do the same thing because they're all glorified poll readers too. If you want to know how the Cook Political Report rates their districts, or how Sabato and others rate their districts, it's very simple. Look at the PVI of the district, look at the general consensus on the House ballot, and do the math. If Florida 27 is D plus 6, and the generic ballot is Democrat plus 10, then guess what? That race is going to be likely Democrat. It's that simple. That's why they were wrong. And Salazar beat Shalala because the polls were wrong. And they are only going to be as accurate as the polls. And I just brought this up yesterday, and I'm going to bring it up right now. Go ahead, Laura. What do you want to say? You have a thought?
Well, I have a thought. You see, you say statistically you are going to be like extremely wrong one day. And I'm telling you that I don't think that's a capability of yours. Like, because you're so...
Yeah, maybe not extremely wrong.
No, because you're talking about you're going to be wrong. Yeah, maybe by a percentage point, but that's within the margin of error.
What, you know what they do to criticize me, Laura? Well, you had Trump up by 1 in Pennsylvania. We had him up 0.8% because we get so granular. First of all, I'll take it to my deathbed that
he won Pennsylvania.
And he won. I know it's a big margin, but you don't have these ballots arriving in any other election. In any other election, even by these pollsters who were in this Politico article, even by the Biden campaign standard of what they thought was still out and vote by mail, Donald Trump's margin was too big. He was going to win the state of Pennsylvania by 60 to 80,000 votes. That is what they were saying on election night. Even when Allegheny and Philadelphia came in. Guess what? That's about 0.8%. Anyway, I'll take it to my grave. But it doesn't matter. The point is, a Trump plus 0.8 in Pennsylvania is still more accurate than a Biden plus 6, 8, 10, 11, 12. Still is. And we overestimated Trump a little bit in some areas, like Pennsylvania, Arizona. He was a little bit. And we overestimated Biden in others. In Wisconsin.
Never over that.
Minnesota. But it never went over the sampling error. Our polling was always within the sampling error. Again. And we had those differences were both directions. They weren't all pro-Trump. Minnesota, we were pro-Biden by 2 points. In Wisconsin, we turned out to be pro-Biden by about 2 points. In Michigan, we were basically dead on. Almost completely dead on. And even if you take away, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not allowed to say it out loud. Even if you take away all those late arrivers, I still think Joe Biden probably would have hung on to Michigan. I don't know if we didn't change COVID rules. No, he would not have held on. He would not have held. No, he would have lost. He would have got crushed, in fact. Those margins in Macomb and Monroe before all of those late arrivers were just too big.
Madman from Philly said everybody, and I mean every color, voted for Trump, and I'm from Philly. What does that tell you?
I will tell you this. Even the New York Times poll had black support for Donald Trump at 22%. Or 24 maybe. We had a whole show on how his support in Philadelphia was actually much higher than we polled it last time around. Last time he got 13% in Philadelphia. In the big data poll for that we conducted in 16, I'm talking about, we had him at 14%. So the increase that we were picking up, which did happen, what I'm saying is we didn't have him at 20% last time. And look at this screen again. And I know we went over this yesterday, but look at this screen again. When 43% of the country is telling you that they are not comfortable talking to you about their political beliefs. And these are the people we reached. What about the ones who refuse to participate in the interviews, which is what this, excuse me, these hiccups, man, which is what these statements, the Democratic statements, that's what they're focusing on. How the participation rates and the response biases. That's great. That's a start. And then once you get past that hurdle, Look at the social bias potential here. Mm-hmm. This is a nightmare. And before the election, we went over this question with you. This is a nightmare, folks. A nightmare. And by the way, I just want to point out, I don't know if they put it up yet, but they did tell me I could talk about it on the show. Even I do talk to Rasmussen. We do not coordinate our results, all right? But I do know the people at Rasmussen. We talk about our findings together all the time. Hey, did you see? Are you seeing this? Hey, what did you get for that question? This is what we got. Never do we say, oh, what'd you get? And then like, oh, we don't coordinate it. I'm going to ask this. What are you going to? That is not what happened. We are simply comparing our results. Hey, did you get a similar result here? Are you seeing this with certain responses? And they sent me this earlier this morning. In November, they asked how likely it was that Democrats either created fraudulent ballots or destroyed Trump's ballots, but overall, generally, committed fraud to ensure that Joe Biden would win key states. A plurality said it was either very likely or somewhat likely. But still, not a majority. After all of the media beating the drums about how people like me and others are, pumping, unsupported claims, unsubstantiated. That was the great one in CNN and the AP. Unsubstantiated. A Reuters poll shows a majority of Republicans believe in the false claim that there was voter fraud. And it's really election fraud, by the way. It's not voter fraud. Voter fraud is like an individual voter committing fraud. That always happens. But what we're talking about this time is like what we're debating is a more grander scale. And with all of their attempts to ban people off of social media for talking about it, it's not working. In fact, the percentage of people who think Joe Biden won this election due to fraud is rising, and we should acknowledge it. All right? Here we go. All the way at the bottom. A lot of cool results here, though, and we can go over them. How likely is it that cheating affected the outcome of the 2020 election? Very likely, 35%, 16%, somewhat likely. That's a majority, folks. That is a 51% majority, with more than a solid third, almost 4 in 10, saying very likely. Only 12% said not very likely. Only 12%. And 32% said not at all likely. This is a problem. This is a serious problem. 62% say photo identification laws for voting are not discriminatory. Which is more important, making it easier for everybody to vote or making sure there is no cheating in elections? 60% making sure there's no cheating. Is it too easy or too hard to vote in the United States of America today? Or is the level of difficulty about right? 41% about right. Too easy, 34%. This goes back to what we were telling you with the results we found for the early spring public polling project. By the way, the link's in the queue down on the YouTube. Support the public polling project. Let's move on to late spring.
Get it, baby.
Yeah, I'm doing good with this.
You are.
Robert would be proud.
Yes, he would.
All right, I'm not good at pitching stuff. I think I am. I just don't like it.
No, listen,
there's a difference.
Rich hates selling rich.
Okay? I do.
And it's not. I try to tell him you're not selling them.
I just want to work
anything. You're providing a service to them. So if they want you to do it, you're really just giving them what they're asking for. And you guys want the best galactic pollster.
We've now left the best pollster in America, right? And then Laura went to the world. And now after the alien question, I'm the best galactic pollster. I'll take it, man.
Until aliens from outer space come and want to debate Rich Barrett's, that's it.
You're the
best galactic pollster.
Until they put their galactic track record against mine. I'll tell you what, I wish I lived in the future and I was polling like galactic parliamentary elections.
Right?
Wouldn't that be so cool? Sick. That'd be awesome. A man can dream. All right.
Love you.
But in any event, the moral of the story here is that they are finding what we are finding, which is that, that you have this cabal of businessmen and politicians, elite businessmen and politicians meeting together to come up with a plan to screw you. when the country overwhelmingly wants these election reforms. And what I'm talking about is what Robert and I have been talking about. We have been getting calls. Robert, you're a lawyer. How do we do this? Rich, you are a political guy. How do we craft these laws? Robert, how do you turn it into a law? We are getting these calls from state legislatures everywhere. Everywhere. Unfortunately, Georgia didn't take some advice. Their bill was a watered down bill that made it easier to do a lot of things we told them you need to prevent. And yet they still called that racist. Anyway, they want to stop this movement. They want to stop Nevada. They want to stop Arizona. They want to stop Michigan. They want to stop Pennsylvania. They want to stop Wisconsin.
I wonder why.
Why? If there was nothing wrong.
If Biden got 80 million of the popular vote.
Doesn't make any sense, does it? Doesn't make any sense. But the country wants it, overwhelmingly wants it. I thought when we polled this nationally, a lot of these questions we asked when we were polling the runoff elections, the 3 polls we did of the runoff election in Georgia, I thought that nationally probably wasn't going to be as pro-election reform as Georgia, and that was simply not true. In fact, most of these questions were very, very close in results. Dead ringers. For the first time ever, strict signature verification was more supported than photo identification. Strongly support was a little bit lower, but combined, strict signature verification was the most supported proposal. Instead of expanding access to drop boxes, more than 6 in 10 Americans want to ban them. They definitely want to ban ballot harvesting, which they view drop boxes, and we do ask them together because it is a way to get around ballot harvesting. If you have a ban in your state on ballot harvesting, drop boxes are the way to get around it.
Yeah,
what is the symmetry there? What is the synergy? Yeah. What is the synergy? Chain of custody.
Yeah.
All right. So basically, everything that you hear from the media and this cabal that wants to stop, the country is on the complete opposite side of the spectrum. They are basically trying to thwart the will of the American people. Not basically. That is what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. What about what Jerry Nadler said how many years ago about mail-in ballots?
Of course.
That it will only lead to corruption.
Absolutely. I wish I still had that clip uploaded up here. I wish I still had that. So Rasmussen is generally in line with some of the stuff that we have found. It really is incredible. Even, by the way, let's look at that by race. Is race up here? 32% of black voters said that voting in this country is too easy. Another 43% of black voters said it's about right. 22% said it was too hard. Even with the media narrative, only 22%. That's it. On whether or not it was likely that cheating affected the outcome, a third of black voters said very likely. It's a majority almost. And 18% said somewhat likely. Because if you combine them, a near majority, nearly 50% of black voters think that cheating actually affected the outcome. So, these headlines from CNN and the Reuters poll and the AP. Mm-hmm. Republicans, they're so stupid. You keep doing this, it's not working. Knock yourself out. You're not marginalizing anybody. Yes, it's true Republicans are the most likely, but for the love of God, 18% of Democrats said very likely. Another 12% said somewhat likely. Same findings we found in Georgia when we said, do you think that Joe Biden supporters, or however we worded it, do you think Donald Trump really won your state? Even a third of Democrats said, yup, but we don't care.
You know what I want to, I really do want to do a polling question about racism. to see how many people truly believe in racism and the divide.
They're tough.
Really
They're tough. What we ask is, that's how we've done it in the past. And what we said, who do you think is the most racist group, or, racist? Who do you think is which group or ethnic group do you think is most racist towards other? Yeah, right? Because you're trying to give them you want them a finger point. Yeah. And then you'll really get their real views instead of saying.
But should we start with, first, do you think there's racism in the country today?
Right. Well, yeah. That's a good idea. Maybe we can
that nexus.
Maybe we can add a section about race in the next poll. That's interesting. So you're saying let's formulate a couple questions to see whether or not. Okay. Yeah, I like that idea. Let me marinate on it.
I know.
I think there are ways to tailor questions to reveal whether or not there's this hidden divide, what they view the country to be. Mm-hmm. By the way, do laws requiring photo identification at the polls discriminate against some voters? 6 in 10 black voters said no. Just about the national average. This is unbelievable. Unbelievable. And this is right up there with what we found. It is right up there with what we found. I did want to do some nesting on the show today. And I said, I'm not going to put it on this spreadsheet to do it now because I'll nest them on the show and then people will see me do it live. Unfortunately, I'm afraid to share that screen with you again. I don't want that to happen again and freeze. So we'll talk about it tomorrow. I'll nest them. I'll put them up now. I'll do it right now. And then we'll talk about them tomorrow. What we had talked about at the end of the show yesterday. Mm-hmm. All right. I thought to myself, well, why would I do this now? Let's do it on the show together, and then you can see it. But now I'm afraid to do it. So I'm going to have to go back to the old dinosaur way of just putting it up, and we'll review it together. All right. With that in mind, I just want to wrap this Pulsar article up, and then we'll get I mean, we can answer a couple questions if you want. That's about where the answers end. Okay. According to Democrats involved with the internal review, Tuesday's statement marks the beginning of a years-long process to examine why, since 2012, most major elections have tilted against the party, despite favorable polling data before the vote. Up and down the ballot, Democrats have been, more often than not, shell-shocked by defeats in races they thought to be competitive, or narrower than expected victories in contests they led comfortably. By the way, great. Did they go over it yet? They didn't. I guess they didn't get in a draw. Look at Susan Collins, Joni Ernst. These were supposed to be competitive elections. Hell, the Democrat led in Maine. If not for the one poll that got it right in 2016 and somehow was trashed this year because it was Trump +8 in Maine's 2nd Congressional District. The only Trump plus poll of Maine's 2nd Congressional District. A district he won by 8 points. They nailed it. Mm-hmm. All right. Democrats are not alone in reviewing what went wrong last year. The polling industry is engaged in multiple reviews of its 2020 performance, including a forthcoming report from the American Association for Public Opinion Research's task force that is expected to address the overestimation of Democrats' performance from the presidential race down to races for Congress and state offices. You can expect a whitewash. Sorry, APOR. You can expect a whitewash like you saw a whitewash in 2016. They didn't invite Rasmussen. Those guys trolled them during the conference. Guess who they had come to speak this year? CNN's pollster. A pollster that had double-digit victories in the House for Democrats. A generic ballot that was off by some 12 points or so. CNN's pollster was the featured speaker this year.
These are awesome speakers. Like they're so.
This is incredible. Did they invite Robert? No.
Nope.
Did they invite Jim? Mm-mm. Did they invite me?
Rich Barris?
No. So I'm unclear on why I should take this report seriously. In fact, Rasmussen has gotten into it with their people who are tasked with reviewing the accuracy of polls on Twitter publicly. By the way, they were wrong. Mm-hmm. Remember that back and forth? They were wrong. We were right. I don't see him circling them back to apologize. That is not going to happen. So you can expect a whitewash from APOR, sadly. Jim called on APOR to sanction some of these pollsters, like Franklin and Marshall, who, again, is a monumental screw-up in their own state. But that won't happen, and the media will keep referring to them as some kind of expert on their state. Hillary Clinton, plus 12. Joe Biden, plus 11. The previously undisclosed Democratic polling review is not being replicated by Republicans, who ultimately lost the presidency and the Senate and won fewer House seats than Democrats. While
I love your faces.
They narrowed the Democratic majority to almost nothing. That's how you report that?
That's what you got from that.
That's what you took from their sound defeat in seats that were likely and leans Democrat? Republicans won every seat that leaned one way or the other. Every single one. And several that were likely, including Shalala. While some in the GOP were also surprised by the party's competitiveness last November and are studying their methods, there is no similar organized effort into the 2022 midterms and the 2024 presidential election. That, I will tell you, is 100% true. And I keep bringing this up in speeches. Because Republicans are cowards without spines, who are afraid of the media, who get bullied by them, they lost districts they could have won. Districts we told them were competitive, we are telling them now are competitive, and they're ready to be fooled again. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Texas, Virginia, even in Florida, there's another one in Florida. They were all led to believe these races were not going to be competitive, and they just missed Texas 15. They just missed in Wisconsin 3. They could have, if they would have backed her, they could have toppled Charlie Crist. Charlie Crispy
Critter. That's what we
called him back, yeah.
Because that man did not know how to stay away from a tanning booth.
You live in Florida, Charlie. The hell are you doing in the tanning bed?
Exactly. Like, go outside. But
she could have defeated him
easily.
I'm easily in the sense that it was easy to defeat him, just not by a huge margin, but it was easy to pull together a 3 to 5 point win. And they didn't do it because they were convinced. There are areas in California, and they're focused on 10-year-old strategy of trying to keep Orange County. Same old districts. Abigail Spangberger should have went down in Virginia 7. Alyssa Slotkin should have went down in Michigan 8. But they picked the wrong side because they believed their polling data and not the better polling data from some of the guys they have on their side, or at least are more sympathetic to their side. Because I know Robert's a Republican, but I'm not sure I would put Jim in the category of that's not right. Mm-hmm. That's not accurate. Jim is an independent pollster. All right. Anyway, Trump went after the polls, said another Democratic pollster involved in the partnership. Quote, he was really pretty overt to those that were listening about some of his distrust of polls or media, unquote. Yeah, okay. Well, here's the problem. The polling problems predate Donald Trump. Yes, they got worse under Donald Trump. And yes, I even believe that some of the stuff he said made it harder for us to talk and reach to Trump supporters. But the culprit here is the media. The media are the ones who want to shame people who don't think like them, look like them, behave like them.
Don't go out of the hive.
Don't come out of the hive mind. If you're not in the hive, there's something morally wrong with you. This is on them. They have become less of a news institution and more of a political party. And that has really ramped up since the era of Obama. They have always tilted to the left. Always tilted to the left. But you could at least count on them. Like Laura and I were talking about the other day when Truth was on, right? So Mapes had, and Dan Rather had repercussions for what they did. The end of the line for Mapes was when CBS found out that she promised her source that she would put her him in contact with the Kerry campaign. Now that incestuous kind of relationship is standard. There's just seemed to be nothing wrong with it. They have incestuous relationships with government officials, parties, whatever, institutions in general. They willingly take disinformation from intelligence agencies and feed it to you. They are part of the PSYOP now. That was not always the case. And Americans are not dumb. So they view them to be the enemy. And it's very difficult to get someone who views you to be an enemy to give you their truthful opinion. This is their fault. This is their fault. This is not Donald Trump's fault. This is on them. This is only females. You can see the somewhat uncomfortable and the very uncomfortable are worse than the national average when we include male and females. And there is a problem with reaching men and getting their honest point of view as well. Mm-hmm. And we can see where they are. And we can see when we're looking at women, we can see what they believe. God, I wish I could show them crosstabs right now. Well, because I want to pull something up. And by the way, I want to show one more thing. Yesterday, I'm listening as, remember when I had to stop and go to the store?
Yeah.
I'm listening to Jen Psaki, okay?
Jen who?
Psaki. All right. She is, along with the rest of them, a total fool, okay? And they are completely misunderstanding, because they, of course, want everybody to get vaccinated, right? They are completely missing what is going on. They're like blaming the NASCAR conservative and saying they're the only ones who won't take this vaccine.
This is
hysterical.
All right.
And when asked, what are you going to do to reach conservatives? And it is true that more conservatives than any other ideology tell us they're a hard no on the vaccine. What are you going to do? Well, we've been running public service announcements between NASCAR and Deadliest Catch. I'm like, these idiots, these total idiots, they're going to have a much bigger problem.
They need to listen to the show.
The same reason, how they view the people who are not, they do. The same way they view those who are not in the hive mind, and which is giving them the problems with polling that they cannot fix. And they'll never fix this.
Nope.
They are not capable of fixing this. Oh, we're going to figure out how we're going to do it. You're not capable of doing it. You can't fix it. You need to shut up, and others who don't keep screwing up, who aren't screw-ups, will tell you how to fix it. So we need to put our egos aside, he says. Oh no, your ego is still front and center. You're just seething with hubris. If you really put your ego aside, you would pick up the phone and call somebody who knows. But you haven't done that. Give me ego crap. Anyway, right before we go, I'll go over that COVID-19 stuff, the vaccination stuff. But the 2020 election shattered turnout records, and since November's, pollsters have been eagerly awaiting official information from the states about who voted and who didn't. The data now is almost entirely available, and there are clues hidden within. Here is what they will tell you. All right. This turnout error was clearly one factor in polling being off across the board, but especially in deeply Republican areas. It also meant, at least in some, this is the memo in quotes, sorry. It also meant, at least in some places, we again underestimated relative turnout among rural and white non-college voters who are overrepresented among low propensity Republicans. Part of that is true, part of that is not. Do you remember the charts before the election? We were asking not only about turnout, we modeled it pretty much dead on, actually, below 160. At first, it was looking like it was going to be around 145, 150, but it exceeded that. All right. But in any event, we had gauged in all of these battleground states. Who are you? Are you going to vote? When are you going to vote? And it was very, very clear. In the state of Pennsylvania, in the state of Ohio, in the state of Iowa, Republicans were going to break records and they were going to do it on election day. You remember this? I mean, this is unbelievable that we are circling back to this after all of the crap that we took. Robert, too. Because Robert and I are going through all of this polling data every Monday. I'm going through it every day on Inside the Numbers. It was right there in front of your face. In Florida, more Republicans were not going to vote by mail this time, which is typically absentee balloting is heavily Republican in the state of Florida, typically. In-person early vote is heavily Democratic. This time it was going to be different. This time there was going to be a massive election day vote for Republicans, bigger than typical, but they weren't going to vote absentee the way they typically do. And that this time they were going to vote in person. Just closer to election day, it was going to ramp up. And we were going to see that big Democratic edge that Nate and the rest, both Nates and everybody else said was insurmountable. I'm not going to entertain this talk right now. I'm going to walk my little poodle. Remember that? I'm not going to entertain this. Biden is going to win Florida. You remember that?
Yeah.
The data was so crystal clear. If you weren't a fool, a fraud, or somebody just so filled with hubris, you're unwilling to listen to somebody else. It was so clear. That edge was going to vaporize as election day approached. And it did. Because you watched this show, you knew, unlike prior years, Democrats did not have 300, 500, 600, 800,000 in voter registration edge to tap on election day to stop that wave. Because you knew, if you watched this show, that the partisan edge for Democrats in Florida had evaporated to the most narrow since 1972, when the damn Secretary of State started to track by party affiliation. And in fact, that edge was gone by election day. The data, it lags. So we were telling you, oh my God, it's below 200 now. Remember? It was, oh boy, we're under 300. Uh-oh, we're at 250. Uh-oh, it's 200. Uh-oh, we're below 200,000. This has never happened. Everybody pay attention. Truth is, by the time Miami-Dade came in, it was so Republican. The truth is, we're probably at it's gone. It's gone. Oh, this poll came out and Joe Biden's going to win Pinellas by 14 points. And
how'd that work out?
He's going to win Miami-Dade by 35 points. Do you remember that? I'm like, oh my God. No, he's not. There's this whole new group of voters. Have you spoken with them? Because we have. 70+% is going to Donald Trump from these voters.
You didn't know they had ESP?
You know what, Laura?
ESP. They don't use the actual data.
You know what, Laura? I'm done talking about this. I'm not entertaining it anymore. I'm going to walk my poodle. Come on, Precious. I could see him too with his little. What do you got? A Pomeranian, bro? What is it? It's not a poodle. Sorry, it was a Pomeranian. You give him little treats. Sit on the bench. You feed the birds together. You freaking cornball.
Is it your only friend? It's okay if it's your only friend.
You freaking cornball.
Well, that's because
Joe Biden has a 95% chance to carry the state of Florida. Yeah, okay.
How'd that pan out for you?
That's about as true as you having any chance of being an actual man.
Or accurate.
I mean, this is or accurate.
True.
That was so obvious.
Tell me that's not
It
true.
was so obvious. And because you want to believe, and Eric, if he's listening, you don't know what I'm saying. You want to believe this if you're an ideologue. If you cannot separate your ideology from the work that you do, you want to believe it. Mm-hmm. So you allow yourself to do it, to push it. Texas is going to Joe Biden. Iowa is competitive. I told you when Trump was ahead in Ohio that it was insurmountable. This is not a competitive race. But I also told you that I did not like the undecided vote in Michigan and that I thought Joe Biden was going to carry Michigan. It didn't matter what I wanted. It's what I saw. I told you what I saw. Now, we'll also say that all of those states turned out to be a more Republican electorate than, first of all, we've seen ever in some of those cases, and more Republican than we actually modeled them. This is why our independent margin is different than other pollsters, because what they didn't seem to understand is that those people telling them they were independents and voting for Joe Biden, that is because Donald Trump had cannibalized so many of those independents. And even if they didn't change their registration, they still told you as a pollster that they were Republican and they were voting for Donald Trump. So this idea that NPA shifted so hard against Donald Trump in Florida was always fictitious. It was a lie, I would even dare call it, because those people went down to the secretary, to the supervisor of elections, in their county, and they changed their registration. I can guarantee you that you will not find an NPA who voted for Donald Trump against Hillary Clinton, who either isn't now just a Republican in Florida. You will not see anybody who said, I switched my vote from Trump to Biden.
Yeah, okay.
That didn't happen. And we know it didn't happen. Trump more than doubled his margin in the state. And he did so because he just cannibalized them. And when you saw the New York Times polling, what he wasn't seeing, because he can't reach everybody, because his method of collection is flawed, fundamentally flawed. What he wasn't seeing were all of those people who told him 4 years ago, or told him 2 years ago, that they were independents, were now Republicans, and telling him they were Republicans. So you don't really lose anybody when you cannibalize them and bring them over to your side. And I'm telling you right off the bat right now, that is part of the reason we are seeing the swelling again in independent numbers. And you will see this again. And that is why we're seeing some of the independent support for Joe Biden get soft or disappear. Because Trump is gone. And those people are not really Republican.
No, it's back to the status quo.
It's back to the status quo, and they're going to go back to being independents, and they're going to call themselves independent or something else, which is getting bigger. The something else category was like 2%. It's 5% now.
Keep doing what you're doing, people. I'm just saying.
All right. So, yeah, basically, look here. They bring up Joni Ernst. You know, this was supposed to be a competitive race, this pollster says. And Joni Ernst clobbered their candidate. And then what happened is they just didn't see all of the low propensity Republican voters turning out 4 times the rate of Democrats in the low propensity category, which is something we talked about in Florida as well. I told you this was happening. I told you. You remember this? I said there are the 4 and 4s, the 1 and 4s, right? How we classified them. I told you that these people who don't vote told us they're going to vote. They're going to vote either closer to election day or on election day. They were split between that category, and they were going to vote for Donald Trump. And everybody, oh, Biden's winning the third party vote. You're missing it. Hello. That is not going to get him to 47% in Florida. That's as far as he's getting. All right. The turnout error was clearly one factor in polling. That's what he said, right? So basically, he brings up Iowa. And the sky-high turnout for Trump among irregular voters only explains a slice of the problem. That is absolutely true. the pollsters concluded. Even if the polls conducted last year were properly adjusted for future turnout, they still would have had a bias toward Democrats. Guys, that is that is an artifact of your methods. You are creating this artifact, and the media is compounding it with a social desirability bias. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. They just don't want someone else like me to be right. Well, so they won't admit it.
Because then they have the opportunity to lie. Just like, for instance, COVID is the excuse for everything that's behind, whether it's materials for fencing or if it's a package to deliver. All right, so if they don't have you sitting there setting a standard of truth and honesty, they are not going to understand.
And that is a problem, like Jim said. Like, where is APOR to sanction this dishonest? Because some of this was very, very dishonest. Langer Research, if we made that kind of a mistake, I would release a statement apologizing and telling I will go back and figure out on how on earth I was 17 points wrong.
Yeah. I mean, if you were
17 points.
17 points wrong,
I'd quit.
He would have.
I'd freaking quit. I'd have a canary.
He would have a
I'd have a meltdown. Right, it would be a health issue for me.
Yes, he would cry for the.
I would, and I'm not a crier.
Yeah,
I would cry. I would Boehner out crazy.
You go Boehner on it. Nice.
And then listen, there is some hint. Like I told you, we were catching a late movement toward the president. If you look at the exit polls, they will show you that Biden won those late deciders. That is was not true across the board. It was not true in Florida. It was not true in Arizona. It was not true in Georgia. It was not true in Texas. It was not true in Ohio. It was not true in Iowa. And he's admitting that even these polls and the exit polls did not catch it. You ready? There is a oh no, that's before. Late movement toward Trump and Republican candidates that polls conducted in the run-up to the election failed to catch. Because they're doing the numbers now. It's not about exit polls anymore. Detailed data is available for most of these battleground states. It is not possible for the polls to have been right about that late run to Biden. That's not what happened. The story was Biden had, and we know, we showed you in Michigan and Georgia and Pennsylvania, they were banking votes, man, since September.
Oh,
and
easy.
They were, yes. And they had nowhere else to. It was always a matter of whether or not Donald Trump would get enough of those late movers and those late voters to the polls. And in states where Trump did it, in Florida, in North Carolina, in Iowa, and Ohio, he swamped with the late movement. He swamped that early vote. There was no last minute, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. That was not true. That didn't happen. Biden won with the votes their organizations, the labor and others, you know who you are, that you bank, you know who you are, you corrupt government employees, the Postal Service. They banked those votes for him. That stuff had been going on for months. And that is why they were so confident, because they had never banked that many votes before. And they didn't think Donald Trump was going to get something like 75 million votes. They just didn't believe it. All right. Anyway, here's something else that will sound very familiar to you. The COVID pandemic caused people who stayed home to answer the phone at a greater rate than those who did not follow restrictions. That's a way to twist what I have been telling you, which is that the panels, the phone polls, all of them, there are more people at home, and liberals are so much more willing to participate in surveys that even our panels are getting flooded with people that don't represent everyone, and they skew heavily Democratic. Mm-hmm. In 2016, our panels were a little bit too conservative, actually. But liberals, they started to catch on. It started to even out a little bit, started to get a little pro-liberal. And then when the pandemic hit, panels exploded. And they exploded with liberals. Men did not answer like men typically answer anymore. Instead, they were flooded with people like Jeffrey Pull-Your-Tubin. He's at home in his boxers pretending to be on a CNN call. He has nothing to do with himself. I think I'll take a survey. God, I hate Orange Man bad. Click, 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 click. I'm going to take a poll. I can't stand Trump, Orange Man bad, Cheetos. That's what he was doing. Him and millions of others. And it was distorting the data. But how do they say it? He was complying while Trump's voters were not, so we couldn't reach them. That's nonsense. First of all, you can reach them on a cell phone. You poll to cell phones. The hell are you talking about? That's the standard now, isn't it, for you guys? If you're polling online, they don't need to be home to take the survey. That's a stupid twist to what is a real problem. Again, because that is their bias, the way they view you, infecting their analysis. Infecting and destroying it. They take a solid principle and they ruin it with their ideology. It has nothing to do with who stayed home and who didn't. And the decline of social trust and faith in institutions is their other one. That is absolutely true. That's causing both biases, to be frank. While there is some evidence, some of these theories played a part, no consensus on a solution has emerged. Well, that's because screw-ups can't tell you how not to screw up. Until they demonstrate that they can do it right, you don't let somebody do something that they have screwed up on in the past. It's like anything else in life. Until they demonstrate they can do it. They can complete that task. A loser is a loser until he wins.
Mm-hmm. And then you know what makes a winner? Somebody who loses and learns from their mistakes
and wins.
This
is the problem. And while they're always going to be, they are going to stay losers because they're asking other losers. My grandmother, when I was young, I'm Italian. I am a wonderful Italian grandmother. The best grandmother in the world. All right.
No bias.
No, it's not even bias. It's a fact. I went to school with school lunches, hoagies, man, this big. What do you got? Oh, I got an Elio's pizza or something, like whatever they would give you in the crappy school. And I'm like, yo, turkey and Swiss sub, lettuce, tomato, oil, and vinegar, soda, a bag of Doritos. She was the bomb. And she used to always tell me, Richard, if you want to make yourself a better person, you have to be around people who are better than you. If you want to be successful, don't hang around with people who aren't successful. If you want to get better at something, be around people who are better than you at it, right? I mean, this is silly little things that are, of course, obvious and true. Why on earth would you ask the losers how to win? And I don't mean losers that win the election. No, they lost at their profession. They failed at their profession and they failed the public in the process. A loser is a loser until they figure out how to win. And they can't if they hang around and keep asking and taking and giving advice to losers.
And it's not like you don't open your door. You have opened your
to
door
anybody
to
and
all
everybody.
of them and said, I am willing to talk
to everybody
you.
And everybody, which is why some people really, frankly, disappoint me.
Yes.
Because, from RCP to the Slimer himself, I have always extended invitations. You want to come see what we do here, how we do it, why we're different, why it works and you're not. I mean,
well, like Robert,
I have offered it. Right.
He'll call you if something's off.
Yeah.
And he's like,
absolutely.
Wow,
hey, did you get that? Right.
And then Rasmussen.
That's what we talk. The industry talks to people. They want to be in their hive and in their bubble. They don't want to,
admit that their narrative.
They don't, because this is why I'm getting so suspicious of their intentions. Than why I have, because Laura will tell you, I have always given them the benefit of the doubt. I have never said, you know what, I think these polls are manipulated on purpose. This election really, I mean, 2016 made me skeptic, but I really thought that there was an attempt. Then when they started to exclude people from that attempt,
you became a cynic.
I started to become a cynic. I really did. They even, look, APOR even contacted me asking me to correct how I wrote about their analysis about Rasmussen being the most accurate national poll in 2016. They wanted me to adjust something that they had set, that they had sanctioned. It was a report that they sanctioned. And because it was Rasmussen, they wanted me to basically weaken the association between that publication and them. It's their official publication. They have sanctioned that publication for years. But that's how ideological this industry is. And I gave them I without compromising the integrity of what I wrote, we came up with a solution. But why on earth would you do that? Ideology. That's why. All right. So while there is some evidence of these theories played a part, no consensus on solution has emerged. We settled on this idea that there is something systematically different about the people we reached and the people we did not. No kidding. This problem appears to have been amplified when Trump was on the ballot, and it is these particular voters who Trump activated and did not participate in polls. Absolutely. There's no but one person says, I'm marginally optimistic that if Trump is on the ballot in 2024, that we can fix it. I don't know. If he's not, I do think a lot of it could resolve itself. You're out of your mind. You're out of your damn mind. He wasn't on the ballot in 2018. You still blew it. 2014 was pre-Trump. You blew a lot of them. And 2022 and 2024 are not going to be any different. In fact, the problem is getting worse. We've been asking these social desirability bias indicators for a while now. It's getting worse. It is not getting better. And Donald Trump has been relatively quiet. It will not get better until the media gets better. Sadly, this problem is here to stay. It's here to stay. I hate to tell everybody. And that's a real shame. But it is. Again, there's only one thing that they're addressing right now. At least they're starting to head in the right direction. But they're really not, because they can't get out of their own way. They're too biased. They're too biased and they're too arrogant. Problem's not going anywhere, gentlemen. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Laura. Let's just show this chart
just
while
want
we
you
do.
to know, breaking news, Christina put, CNN director admits network engaged in propaganda to remove Trump from presidency. Our focus was to get Trump out of office. I came to CNN because I wanted to be a part of that.
Where is that? Project Veritas or something?
O'Keefe.
That's James O'Keefe. That's Project Veritas. Oh, man. I mean, there's no, guys, everything I told you was true. All right. The hell with all these other people, the PolitiFacts, they're in on it too. They're not a fact-based organization. They're not a fact-checking organization. There was a cabal that came together, media, everything from media to global leaders to big corporations, all the way down to the little guy at the district county clerk district's office in Michigan, in your area where you live. They leaned on these people to change the rules. They engaged in unprecedented number of propaganda to defeat a president who ended up getting the most votes any incumbent president has ever received, ever. No president has ever been defeated if they increased their vote share. None. Never. Barack Obama became the first president to be reelected with a smaller number of votes in the Electoral College and in the raw popular vote. Do you understand how unbelievably unlikely this is, with all things being equal? No, I have this up because I want to talk about vaccinations. Okay. With all things being equal. What is the likelihood? It's nil, folks. It's nil. A cabal got together to defeat you and your president. That is what happened.
Because how dare you?
I'm not at all surprised by this video. And I'm looking at it right now. In fact, I'm not at all surprised by this. I've overheard conversations that are separate from this. They were all in on it. People down in Miami trying to convince Cubans they're racist against themselves. I know. That was incredible. Special. Just incredible.
You remember that woman who called me racist
against
Hispanics? And I was like, so I self-hate?
A white liberal calling my Hispanic
wife
a racist against Hispanics.
That was rich. That was rich. No, not Rich Barris. That was like riches in the state. No. I was like, wait.
You gotta. But that's what happened. Bottom line, that's what happened. If this was any other election, even with the pandemic, if they didn't change the rules, Joe Biden still defeated. Soundly, in fact. Soundly. But they did change the rules. They loosened the standards. They loosened the restrictions. All of that is true. There was absolutely, it's not a conspiracy. There was absolutely a cabal to defeat you and your president, to get rid of him. Pro-China cabal, all of it. It's all true. China selected someone to replace Donald Trump in what is supposedly the free world. That's what happened. Deal with reality. I mean, it's incredible to think about. But in Charlie Gasparino, Charlie, you know what I'm saying is true. Right now, you know it. You got your Wall Street friends. You're talking to the same people I know because they told me they've talked to you and told you. China used their Wall Street connections to push Joe Biden into the race. They wanted him. They targeted him. I wonder why. While Trump has them on their knees. Good thing I'm not on camera.
Yes, I would have killed you for that one. And,
that was an obscene gesture.
Jay said, that's not a conspiracy. Like, seriously.
Yeah, I mean, right. That's how it went. I mean, it is actually it really is a conspiracy, though. You know what I mean? Like, literally, like in the word, in the legal definition of the word, right? It's actually was a conspiracy. But the media wants you to think it's like a conspiracy in the fact that it's unsupported, like their Russia collusion hoax, right?
Like all the conspiracies that they create against us.
And by the way, how could Donald Trump be banned for what he did if Hillary Clinton still to this day tells people her election was stolen? James Hodgkinson, the shooter who shot Steve Scalise and 4 others, they're worried about the Capitol Hill insurrection. He posted something from her right before he got in the van. He fully believed Donald Trump was a Russian asset who stole the election working with Vladimir Putin. All right. And because Hillary Clinton tweeted it out, because Hillary Clinton couldn't shut up, because every Democrat went on the wagon with it and pushed a disinformation campaign, they convinced this man that our president was a traitor. Was the enemy. I'm not kidding.
That very same individual has servers in her bathroom.
No, that's what
that were bleached.
And why does she still have a Twitter account, Laura?
Yeah.
Why does she have a Twitter account? If Donald Trump is too dangerous to have a Twitter account, well, ask Steve Scalise how dangerous she is.
How many people has she wet?
The truth is, they just want. Yeah, please don't go down there.
Crazy.
The truth is, they want to control the information. They don't care about disinformation. They use disinformation every day. They just want to be the only ones allowed to do it. All right, what questions we got here?
Oh, I got lots. I got some cool ones too. All questions are cool.
Well, because we glitched. I was only going to do an hour today, but because we glitched,
Right. Let's see. Where did it go? Oh, I scrolled too far down. My bad. All right. M. Holler wants to know. He wants to know why Trump wants a never Trumper to run in Wisconsin and Ron Johnson to retire and think. I can't say the name.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. I know what he's talking. I don't know what's going on there. I really do need to make a couple of calls and see. I don't know what is happening there. I really don't. Could be something we don't know. But also, look, JD Vance, who I know the Mandel Mandel people think that JD Vance, if he runs, is going to get that endorsement. He was a lockdown scammer. I mean, if you supported lockdowns, you helped to defeat Donald Trump. You did.
Yep.
So I don't know. I cannot interpret the thinking for Donald Trump right now. I really. Robert and I have said our piece on this. The bottom line is
he needs new people.
Trump he needs new people, or he needs to grow. I mean, after a while, you can't just keep faulting the people around him. You're the one who a leader chooses to put those people around him. I mean, that's some measure of a leader. I mean, and then I know you don't like Mike Pence anymore, Laura, but to spend your time the way he did bashing Mike Pence when there's so much else going on. is unproductive. He's becoming a hurdle, an obstacle. I mean, he didn't get involved in Georgia. He's getting in the way of himself. He didn't get involved in Georgia with the election reform law. Those of us who actually support integrity and didn't want to expand, avenues that create greater risks of fraud could have used his help.
Yep. Just saying.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yep. Real Jim wants to know, does Rich think the margin was what you really think the margin was in the six messed up states? And what do you actually think Plug's actual popular vote was?
So if we use just from the Democratic expert himself in Arizona, if we use that, that sample he had about, I think it was 13%, would not have verified, then that's it. The margin's got, he carried Arizona by about the amount we polled it. I mean, that's if the rejection rate was what the Democratic expert predicted it to be, then that would have been exactly what the big data poll showed. In Georgia, I don't even think there's a question there. If Fulton County had a problem 2 years ago with their rejection rates, and there was an issue, they had a court-appointed monitor because it was thought that they allowed signatures to go through that weren't allowed to go through. That monitor just was on his cell phone and fell asleep at the Arena Center all damn night. I mean, it was a joke. It was a total joke. And, Gwinnett County in the past, their rejection rates have been very high, 12%, 7%. It was nothing, almost nothing this time. Like we told you it was going to be. I mean, 0 point something is not a historically accurate rejection rate. In the state of Michigan, one state I do think Joe Biden probably could have still held on, without this vote by mail and low rejection rates for vote by mails. Maybe not. I don't know. But the bottom line is, I told you all of those records. We read them on air, for crying out loud. The judge agreed with what I had been telling you. The law requires the vetting of the signature. Jocelyn Benson unilaterally changed the law herself. She dictated that you're supposed to give the signature the benefit of the doubt. That is not the standard. The standard is that it matches within reason. If there's a problem with the signature, a voter typically has a chance to rectify it. But that signature is rejected. That ballot is rejected. That's not the rule this time. I was right. PolitiFact and everybody else was wrong. We're wrong. This time, if the signatures didn't match, they still give the benefit of the doubt and approve the ballot. That rejection rate statewide is an insult to thinking people. 0.14%. That comes, folks, to about 14,000 ballots. So in the analysis we did of the subsample, we were looking at an estimate of around 9,000. So you're telling me in my subsample, we found nearly every single ballot statewide? Get the hell out of here. Get out of here. No way. In Pennsylvania, if one thing Rudy said, Rudy really botched that up, man. Yeah. But if he said anything that was true, it's that in any other prior election in the state of Pennsylvania where there wasn't even early voting until 2020, in any other election, Donald Trump's margin would have called it on election night, because there simply wasn't going to be 170,000 ballots coming in 48 hours late. That was not going to happen. They had to account for how many ballots they had, and it would have been added up and tallied up on election night. We would have known who won the state of Pennsylvania. It would have been Donald Trump. Again, even the people we were just reading from on election night thought, even though the margin looked big for Trump, we knew there was Democratic vote out, and we knew that was going to shrink. But his margin was bigger in some of these areas than it was in 2016. It was only the late arriving ballots that flipped Erie County, folks, even in the Northeast. So he holds Biden down. Everything else was looking really grim for them. Donald Trump's election day vote far exceeded what they thought they could sustain. But, they got really rosy when they called the attorney general in the state of Pennsylvania, and he said, don't worry, we're going to find those votes for you in Allegheny County.
End of story.
That is what he told the Biden campaign. Don't worry. We'll find him. I'm not kidding.
I know you're not.
Iowa and Ohio were never close. Notice that they did not get some of those changes that they got in Wisconsin, that they got in Pennsylvania, that they got in Michigan. Republican legislatures rolled right over. That should never have happened in Arizona. Steve Ducey, he should be excoriating.
Yeah.
Like if this was, speaking of Thomas Jefferson's birthday, if he had them to contend with, they'd have burned his effigy, man. He'd be fleeing. So what do I think the real margin is? I don't know that we'll ever really know for sure. The only one I feel confident saying that probably Joe Biden would have held on to without all of the changes is Michigan. And that is based on the research that we did combined with the polling data that I had before the election that we conducted. I didn't like that last 2.8% that was going to swing it. I just thought it favored Biden a little bit. I did. Mm-hmm. And
a lot of it.
Yeah, a lot of it. Yeah, like if they were going to vote, they were going to vote for Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. You know, it was, I thought it would be too much for Trump to overcome. Michigan's very difficult. Unlike Michigan and Pennsylvania, I was most uncomfortable with our projected win for Biden in Wisconsin. And even though we had a Wisconsin light blue, it actually, for some of the election models, when you account for some of the other stuff, that actually caused one of the better models to turn Wisconsin red. Our poll did, because if you looked inside the numbers, it showed that the electorate looked like it was probably going to be more Republican, and that Trump was actually still going to carry southeastern suburban, areas where Joe Biden had been making inroads with these voters. They used to be Republican areas, but I've talked to you about this before. They don't look the same as they did, 4 years ago, 8 years ago. But he still did very well there. So Kenosha, Racine, areas like that. The suburbs didn't move in Wisconsin. I was most uncomfortable with the polling in Wisconsin. I knew Wisconsin is not like the others. It's predominantly rural. And even though it has a higher Asian population than some of these other states, that really looks good for Democrats. And when you glance at the demographics, it's not as good for them as you'd think, because regionally, even racial demographics start to get impacted. So if it's an Asian in Metro, in Milwaukee, he's gonna be Democrat, right? But if he's in Polk County or something, he's gonna vote Republican. So I was most uncomfortable because that is a very difficult state to poll. It's more rural than the rest, and it looks more like Iowa, So, I think probably, not probably. I mean, it's my opinion that Donald Trump probably won that election. Even with Michigan, it's not enough. It's not enough. Without the changes, I think Donald Trump would have been reelected pretty handedly. Yeah.
Sandy Paws from Locals would like to know if we were talking about Indian population. And
not Native American, no, Indian Asia, right?
India.
Yeah.
And
good. That'll help me get these charts in there.
Yeah. So I figured it'd be a nice segue. So I said that I think that they would be more easier to persuade.
Absolutely.
Because of their conservative social issues. And she was talking about how, they come from a socialist kind of background, which might be harder, which I understand completely.
But so do Cubans and Venezuelans,
So talk about
so do Cubans and Venezuelans. It does appear the new Indian population is pretty pro-Republican. And they loved Donald Trump. Loved him. When we polled even Trump's approval rating, they were like in the 60s. I mean, it was, and there are small samples. So it'd be interesting to do a survey just on Indian Americans that, and by generation, what are the differences? Are you first? Are you second? Are you third? They're deeply skeptical of government. They are deeply skeptical of lockdowns. I know this from other work we've done. And then it wasn't surprising to me to find this, right? Oh, this is by age. Let's go to race first. All right. So I have no plans to get vaccinated. that other category right there is mostly is Indian and other Asian that you don't see up here, specifics, right? So if you're Asian in our surveys, then you're Asian in the sense of Filipino. You can be from the Philippines. You can be from here. You know what? Let me just pull it up. I'll get exactly what the Asian detail question is. All right. Let me see. What do we got? Yeah, I'd go to the crosstab, but it doesn't necessarily mean we have, because we have a lot of different countries. So give me 2 seconds to pull it up. Let me go to my question library, because it's important. It's broad. Most people think of Asians and they think, well, you know, what, Korean, Japanese, but it can be a lot more than that. All right. Here, global questions. Let me go to my library here, demographics. Let's go to race, ethnicity, expanded, race, ethnicity, basic. Where is it? Come on. It's just such a big, it has gotten, my question library has gotten huge. It's just over the years it builds up. All right. So if you answer Asian, it could be Chinese, Indian, Filipino, Vietnamese, Korean, Japanese, other Asian group, right? And if they pick either Indian or other Asian groups, some of them, then we want to know specifically which one is it, right? So in this Indian category, in this other category, the other Asian group category, that's where they'll fall. And if they're Asian, then it'll eventually be some Chinese, Filipino, Vietnamese, Korean, Japanese, right? Something like that. Burma, right? Myanmar, right? So in any event, look at this. They are a small group. It's a small sample. So that's important to note. The error rate is, I believe, 8.5, but it's still 46%. So that's very significant. 17.6 for Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. And then the other is American Indian or Alaskan Native. That's the only one bigger than that other and Indian population, right? This is why Jen Psaki is an idiot. All right. And the entire Biden administration's strategy to get people to take this vaccine is stupid. All right. If it works on accident. It works because the American people decided to change their mind, not because they ran public service announcements on NASCAR and in between deadliest catch on commercial breaks. How on earth are you going to reach? You see right now who is most likely to tell us they're not going to get vaccinated. How on earth are they going to reach them with this strategy? Do you think these people are watching NASCAR or deadliest catch? That, yes, it's true that more conservatives, but just because they see more conservatives are less likely to take it than any other group, they immediately think of the white hick, right? That's what they think of because that's what they view people as. That's how they view a conservative. A white hillbilly who likes NASCAR, backward, right? Goes to church every Sunday, right? All those fools, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not who we're talking about here. That's not who we're talking about. Whites in general.
Which shows you how out of touch
this is because they're freaking racist in many respects. Yes. They're racist and prejudiced, and they are and that causes them to be out of touch. Look by age. Those people, 72%, I have already been vaccinated, are whites who are older. That's where this is coming from. In fact, if you go back to race real quick, what this shows is that you have 22.1% of Hispanic or Latinos who say they have no plans to. Blacks and African Americans are actually slightly above the national average. Whites are slightly below it, and so are Hispanics. What this shows, if you look at who already has been vaccinated, is that the Obama administration is administering this vaccine by their own standards. Mm-hmm. If this was the Trump administration, they'd say that Trump is not administering this vaccine fairly, that he is prejudiced because all of these minorities who want to get the vaccine haven't gotten it yet. It must be an issue of accessibility, right? And they would say that it's like institutionally flawed, institutionally racist. That is how they would interpret this if it was Trump. What it tells me is that minorities are skeptical and minorities don't have access to it as much as affluent whites and some others. Because you can see right here that whites are overwhelmingly higher than the national average, they are overwhelmingly more likely to say they've been vaccinated than anybody else. So it's not at all what Jen Psaki laid out. And if that's her understanding of this problem, she's got a big problem. 72% have already been vaccinated, or 65 plus. I have no plans to get the vaccine. Overall, like we've showed, 24.6. Who's the largest category? Workers, age 30 to 44. 18 to 29 or after that. I mean, she's completely lost in the sauce. Mm-hmm. They have no grasp on what is driving this. None.
And the other thing about Psaki is
incredible.
She's petrified to actually have to answer a question that's off script.
Yeah.
So if she talks, it's only the points that they have told her to speak about.
But then because we know that's how I know they have a real problem, yes. Because that means that's their official thinking. Mm-hmm. Their team thinks that this is a bunch of white, hillbilly, conservative, NASCAR fans, Walmart Pumpkin shoppers. Country. Yeah. That's what they think. And that is clearly not true. And by the way, if going over back to what the Democratic pollsters were saying in the Politico and in their statement, what do you think a census survey is? Most of them, until they conduct the actual census, most of them are household surveys. That's it. You think the CDC is going to get their data from? And then that's why burden estimates are later changed so much. Because they'll go back and get actual data later and revise it. That's why there are so many changes and adjustments to vaccination data at the end of the year for the flu and other things. They're going to start, if the White House wants to know right away, they're going to do surveys. They're going to conduct surveys until they get raw data. And if they can't reach people for politics, I'm sure they're not going to be able to reach him for this. So they have a very, very screwed up idea of what's going on. I'm sorry, I want to read this real quick. A bill to expose the name and address of everyone who signs a recall petition just passed the Senate Elections Committee. California's counter-enlightenment marches on. Holy crap, Kevin. Are you serious? They just passed a doxing bill? Land of the free, home of the brave, right? Land of the free, home of the brave. Now, this has become the land of the tyrants and home of the timid.
Yeah. Ooh, that's beautiful.
That is what this has become.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm sorry, but that's Soviet. That's Soviet right there. Holy crap. All right, with that, it's 1:02. I'm going to have to kick rocks.
Real quick, though.
Yeah.
Cindy and I were talking while you were talking about Indians, and I want to nest the upper caste India versus the lower and see who's more.
I don't know that. I don't from where they're from. You mean?
No, all you need is their income. You could tell by because.
Oh, you mean income levels?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
India,
different.
the upper caste make more money. They're like more royalty.
Okay.
You remember?
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Because we can do that.
Yeah. The closer to royalty,
I'll do it for everybody.
The more money you get.
I'll do it from everybody. I'll do it for everyone. Yeah, I mean that's actually a good question. Mm-hmm. That really is.
I liked it.
I'll do that now before I have a quick meet with Don. I got to meet with a client in a little bit.
Yes, and then.
And can they watch my speech to the university, or is that no? That's that close?
That I'm not sure about. I will ask because he will be calling me later because we're going to firm things up and whatnot and make sure everything is copacetic.
And if not,
Rich is giving a speech to the Texas Christian University and
on polling
and what challenges he faced against those that opposed him
and a lot about what we're talking about now. Mm-hmm. And about the problems with the industry and how I've managed not to make
their mistakes.
Yeah. So and if I can get it, then I'd like to show it. It'd be cool.
I saved your questions, and I also saved some poll suggestions that I heard from Red Rum and from Ted Irving and Imperator.
And then if we'll nest the stuff now that I was going to go over on the show. That really stinks, man.
And then we're gonna play.
And we'll talk about it
too.
Yeah,
Wirecast. We have to play with it.
We have to get. I got to get Wirecast back. I got to get it back. I shouldn't even be saying the brand, but whatever.
Oh, sorry.
I do.
My bad.
I do personally prefer Wirecast for production software, but that's my personal opinion. We're not paid by Wirecast. No endorsement.
No.
Crap. I got a lot of heat over Dr. Squatch.
Did you? Oh yeah, that's right.
By the way, gents, Dr. Squatch is now making pine tar and deodorant. Pine tar is their original bar. I love pine tar. Satisfaction guarantee. Okay. I don't use anything but natural soap anymore. I can't believe what a difference it is. I can't believe how dangerous some of these other products are. I've always known about aluminum and deodorant, but it's like you have to have a deodorant that does the job. Dr. Squatch does the job. It does. And Laura is sniffing me all day because it smells so good.
So you know how I don't know. It smells like what a man's supposed to smell.
It does. Oh, they're gonna. Oh, that's a good. It smells like what a man is supposed to smell. If you've ever seen
nature based, so it's like he smells woodsy, but relaxing. And then sometimes, when he wears it, I'm like, oh, I need a cup of tea.
I can't wait till they make wood barrel bourbon and deodorant because I love that soap. But pine tar is like my go-to. Even my son loves pine tar too. That's my go-to. And it was like their first scent. And for some reason they used other ones when they came out with deodorant. Alpine Sage is the one I liked. That's like,
and for me, Lady Bell just asked, sorry, I cut you off.
Oh yeah.
So Lady Bell just asked, what do I use? So I'm addicted to this Rocky Mountain.
Yeah, she likes Rocky Mountain.
It's called lemongrass. It's like,
oh God,
summer in a bottle.
It smells so good.
It smells like, honestly, did you ever smell like a lemon drop? It's like, it's not overly lemon, but it's like a sweet, refreshing lemon.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And guys, it smells good. It smells good. I'm like, that's lemongrass. I mean, and you can smell it. It smells like, I get where it's coming. It's lemongrass. It just has an extra something to it. It's
just
incredible.
Awesome. And then the lavender with basil inside it, I like that one too.
Yeah.
But that one I like for winter, and I like my lemongrass for summer.
And Danielle, remember those Axe body spray commercials? I love. That's what got me to buy Dr. Squatch. Their advertising campaign. It was hilarious. And then someone told me, the background of the owners and stuff. I'm like, all right, let me give this a go. And I was also skeptical because it looks like it's expensive, but the products last so long that it's actually not. It's incredible. You're like, whoa, toothpaste. I can buy that toothpaste at the store for cheap, way cheaper. But your toothpaste at the store does not last like this toothpaste lasts. So it winds up doing it. It winds up being about really no different.
And two quick comments. One was hysterical, and then the other one was very, very sweet. Ted Irving said, that's because Rich is the only one who understands the rural Klingon women, though.
Yeah.
Galactic bolster.
Yeah.
And then Christina said, we are in new times with people. I often wonder what our four founders that during that monumental time, Rich is a new founding member.
Oh,
isn't that sweet?
Thank you. That's a hell of a compliment.
I try not to blow his head up too
That's
much,
a hell of a compliment. I wonder what they think of us too now, and I think they'd be
rolling in their grave.
Really disappointed in us. I mean, honestly, they just never viewed government to do to be. I think they would tell us that we are using government as a crutch. And we're sacrificing our liberties because we're unable or unwilling to do things that we should be doing ourselves. So we basically give up some of our freedom to allow others to do it for us because we're lazy, because we're ignorant toward them. I just really, and some of the stuff, like I said before, you think they're immoral with slavery. You know how they would feel about abortion in this country? That there's an entire industry, billion-dollar industry, that survives off of the destruction of 500,000 lives a year. I mean, I think they'd be horrified. Look, guys, just to let you know, I'm not like a holy roller or a personal thumper myself. I became pro-life when I became a father. Like when you see the ultrasound and you're like, oh my.
It's real.
That's a human being. Like that's that, I was young. and very socially liberal. I don't judge I wouldn't judge anybody. I'm just saying my own personal feelings is that I would never abort a child. Never. Never. When I was young, I was stupid. I just didn't. And when you're raised where we're raised, I mean, our health classes starting in middle school, maybe even a little earlier, started telling us, they really drilled the fetus argument in the 80s and 90s.
It's not alive.
It's a fetus. It's not a baby. Don't destroy your lives. You have options if you get pregnant. Don't ruin your life. Don't ruin your life. That was the angle that came at us from. So I was raised with that view, and it really wasn't until it was, it's a baby. I mean, that's it. It's a baby, and that's all right. If you want to hold that view, that's all right. But what does bother me is that, at least come to terms with what you're doing. At least be a man or a woman, be a person enough, have enough character to admit what it is you are doing, instead of trying to pretend like this new science, as the science is not going in the pro-abortion direction. What more we learn, the science is more pro-life. It, leans towards pro-life. So you got to come to grips with what you're doing, at least, and that you can have your point of view, but don't pretend like you're not doing what you're doing. All right. With that, I think they'd be horrified at that.
No, this whole world, it would be to them. Yeah. This would be socialism to them.
And absolutely. And Sam Adams would say that it's completely unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. Sam Adams talked about what he called the schemes of leveling. Mm-hmm. Right. And in this Constitution, or in this republic, it is wholly unconstitutional or something. That's in there too. Matter of fact, I just don't know where, so I won't go scouring through it. All right, but with that, we're gonna peel. Mm-hmm. Don't forget to join the People's Pundit Locals community at peoplespundit.locals.com, where we can discuss what surveys are coming next and what they're going to include. Support the Public Polling Project. Links in the thing. It's bigdatapolls.com/public/polling/project. I should fix it. And with that,
you think?
Yeah. So where I could just put in Public Polling Project and it would or but just put in a redirect.
All right.
So I can say that it's bigdatapoll/Public Polling Project. Done. And then it'll redirect to the regular.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You feel me? You feel me?
I got you, Smalls.
All right, got me, Smalls. All right, guys, we will see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Again, Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday. Thanks for everything as always. We will see you in the AM.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love just for a little fun? I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Get on a plane and take a one-way ride. Steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear overnight, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit. together.